Alright guys, we're going to take a look at the Fogger. No, we're not. We're going to look at his cousin, the Kaiser. Alright, so Loong has done it again. We're going to be looking at another tank system by them. So, what is the difference between this one and its predecessor, the Fogger? Why not Fogger V5 or something like that? Well, because it has a completely different type of architecture inside. If you look at the inner workings of these things, like you can tell, it's much different. Okay, we're going to be going through a new ceramic type setup that I can only relate this thing as close to the Rose atomizer. However, it's not going to have the Rose atomizer prices. So quickly, let's take this thing apart and then set each piece aside, and let me show you how this thing works. Okay, so first we have the top cap over here, and then we have the upper part of the tank. It's very interesting how the upper part of the tank works, because what happens is that it goes through first one set of threading, and then you have to lift it up a little bit so that it goes through the second set of threadings. And now this thing is going to come up. The reason for this I'll explain in a bit. Okay, so glass tank, and then this is the chimney portion. Also, there is a lower part of the tank over here that's basically meant to cover up the screws. I'm going to show you the bottom over here, and it's really kind of interesting how it looks, because it's kind of like a steampunk-ish design. I kind of dig that. Right, and the chimney, all right, like many other type of atomizers, okay, more or less, this thing is going to be a little bit on the juice control side. Okay, now for many atomizers, juice control isn't that necessary, but this one I found more or less, yeah, juice control is kind of necessary. Okay, so depends what we're doing, but I'll get more into that. So as you can see on the inside over here, we are working with the ceramic cup. So let me go ahead and get a screwdriver real quick, and then we'll talk more about this. Okay, so my screwdriver ready over here, and there is many ways of wicking this thing. Okay, now if you've already seen the inside of the Foggers, okay, they basically it's kind of like an aqua setup. Okay, so what happens is that in the Fogger, you kind of have no choice but to set up a dual coil setup. While in this one, you could do a single coil setup, right? And in the Fogger, many times you kind of don't want to be bothered with the dual coil setup, because the screws aren't slotted, or there's no holes in the pins on the side, so it becomes very difficult to set up the dual coils when you're just wrapping from the top of the screws. But on this one, however, okay, it's a little bit easier to work with, as long as you can get used to the idea of it. So the screws release from the side over here, kind of like a Frankenstein fashion. Okay, and then from this point is where we're able to go ahead and then lift the coil from the atomizer. Okay, so let me go ahead and get some tweezers, and then we could go ahead and lift this little guy. Okay, the ceramic cup over here is also removable. All right, and then for those of you who have experience with the Rose atomizer, basically is the exact same idea. Right? In order to compensate for using dual coils, we could go ahead and use a much thicker gauge Canthal on this one. This in my hand right here, okay, is a 26 gauge micro coil that I have already set up. Right? Let me focus this for you a little bit so that you can see a little better. Okay. All right. Now. What are we going to do? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and remove this wick intentionally first, so that like I could show you guys how to wick these things. Okay, what I like about this is that like there is room so that like you could do a regular micro coil, or you could go ahead and set up a macro coil if you like, because there is enough room for you to go ahead and do so. Now the macro coil I would recommend for a silica build, while the micro coil I would recommend more for like the cotton or rayon cellulocotton build. Okay, so because right now cellulocotton is all the craze, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys a cellulocotton type build. Okay, so there is the cotton over here, and then here is the coil in my hand, right? So what is the difference between this coil and most coils? Well, this coil is very important that you get the right height. Okay, so what happens is that, like, after you build the microcoil first, you want to go ahead and then feed it in through your ceramic cup. See what I'm saying? Let me adjust the focus on this thing a little bit better. Right, so you want to feed it through your ceramic cup over here, and then you want to make sure there's just the right amount of length going on. Okay, I would say over here is probably about like like 2.5 centimeters. Okay, and from here it's just enough to fit into the other two holes over here, and then we tie down with the screws. Okay, so before we do all this, I want to get this thing pre-wicked first. Okay, so in order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit of the cellucotton here. Now, what I recommend that everybody does with the cellucotton, okay, is one of two things. All right, you could either go ahead and fold it in half and then pull this way and then clip it off, or you could do what I would like to do, which is just grab the right amount of cellucotton as if we're wicking it single. Okay, so here we go. Okay. Again, doesn't matter if you're using cotton or cellucotton on this one, it's still going to be the same idea. I'm gonna go ahead and get some scissors. Alright, chop off a little bit here, and then feed this portion through my coil. Now, I got the whole thing feeding through the coil over here. Okay, so now what do I want to do? I want to go ahead and then feed it through over here. Okay, and then, okay, now once I have this sitting down, I want to gently press with my thumb on top. Okay, so you got to make sure that the microcoil that you built is pinched and torched nicely so that it's very solid in form. And then as you push down over here, once you tighten these screws, you can feel it tighten. You definitely feel it tighten. Okay, so this is nice and tight right now. It's not going anywhere. Right? All right, so now trying to thread two coils. So into two slots. So what do? Exactly from right here. See what's going on? Right, you guessed it. We're going to go ahead and take our scissors and then directly down the middle of our wick. Okay, I'm going to chop it. So something like that. And then back it off a little bit more. There we go. Hopefully you guys could have a good look of my work at hand. Right? So at this point is where you want to grab a smaller flathead screwdriver, help you do your thing. Tuck your cotton in where it needs to be. All right. So now what I want to do is I want to put my chimney on nice and gently. Okay, so now we have a hot mess. I find that in situations like these, the nail clippers, they really get in there. You know, it's just a lot cleaner. There we go. So I clip this side, and I go ahead and I'm going to clip this side. Okay, now keep in mind of this thing, right? Normally in other atomizers like the K-Fun and other chimney type of atomizers, we want to lock this down very tight, right? However, not this one, okay? Because remember, this is a little more or less on the juice control side, okay? There's going to be times where, depending on your heat setting, it might be a little bit dry. So you're going to need to release this just a little bit to give it a little more juice control. Okay, so we don't want this part too tight. All right, so now we want to put the Kaiser belt back on over here so that we cover up all that steampunk looking inner workings, the bottom. Okay, and then we go ahead and we put the glass tank on like so, and then we're going to go ahead and then put the upper part of the tank. First we have to spin through one set of threads, and then we have to spin through a second set of threads. Okay, as I said before, not ridiculously tight. Okay, where it says Kaiser over here, see how it's still able to move? I can still control this. Right. Okay, so that's basically what I want. All right, not too tight. Okay, now from this point on is where we're going to go ahead and fill our juice. Unlike its cousin, the fogger. Okay, I don't say its predecessor or its brother or anything. It's more like a cousin because they are not similar in many ways. Also, the juice capacity of this thing is not the same either. This is more of a 2.5 mil, while the fogger is known for being a larger 4 mil. Okay, larger capacity, smaller capacity. It's not a pro nor a con, in my opinion. It's about knowing exactly how much you vape. Okay, because many times if you're not unable to finish a whole tank, then sometimes if you're vaping at a lot of heat, your leftover juice is going to get kind of brown and gunky and kind of nasty, almost as if like the juice is almost over steeped. So having a huge capacity, if that's not what you vape daily, it's probably better to have a slightly smaller tank that you could definitely finish every single day. So it's neither a pro nor a con. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and then screw this part back on. Okay, and then we're going to put this part back on. There we go. And that is the Kaiser from Loong. In my personal opinion, how does she vape compare to the fogger? Okay, so here's the Kaiser sitting on a DNA, all right? And I have it set at 12 watts, so it's nothing crazy. And right now it's firing at 1.3 ohms, so that's going to be 4.0 volts into it. So basically it's sitting on like a regular mech mod, okay? And let me show you the performance of it. I find the airflow and the draw to be just like the fogger. The dial over here to adjust the airflow is a little bit better than the fogger because it has a little more attention to it. So where you set it, it's going to stay put a little better. As far as the build of this thing, I find this to be right down the middle between the Kaiser and the fogger, where the Kaiser, it's a little bit more getting used to because not to the rose atomizer was never that popular, so it's going to take a little bit of getting used to when cutting the right amount of candle. Normally when we build different kinds of atomizers, we would always lock down all your screws first and then chop off our canthols or spin it off or something like that, while over here we need to cut the exact correct length before we go ahead and lock down the screws. So basically you got to get used to that part. But once you're able to do that, I think you're going to find the build on this much easier to do than working with the dual coils and other atomizers. So yeah, definitely check this thing out if you can. As of the date of this video, I haven't seen this particular item available anywhere other than Vapercompany. So kudos to them for being able to get it first. So that's my review, and take care, guys.